In the world of American coinage, few coins captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and everyday people like the humble wheat penny. And when we turn our attention to the year 1954, we uncover a fascinating chapter of numismatic history that stretches far beyond the copper coin itself. The 1954 wheat penny represents a post-war America, a society transitioning from the challenges of World War II into the prosperity of the 1950s, and every detail of this coin, from its design to its circulation to the stories it carried in pockets, purses, and cash registers, tells us something about that era. When we speak about the 1954 wheat penny, we are not just talking about a small copper coin struck at the United States Mint. We are looking into a time capsule that holds within it the economic conditions, the artistic ideals, the minting technology, and the spirit of a nation finding its place on the world stage. In the mid-20th century, the obverse of the wheat penny, of course, bears the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, first appearing in 1909 to celebrate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. This design remained unchanged for decades, becoming one of the most enduring and iconic images on American coinage. Brenner's initials, which had been controversial upon the coin's release, had returned to the design in 1918, appearing at the base of Lincoln's shoulder, and by 1954, this portrait had become almost sacred, a reminder of Lincoln's role in preserving the Union and ending slavery to millions of Americans. The reverse of the coin retained its classic wheat ears design, symbolizing agricultural abundance and national strength. By 1954, the wheat reverse had already been in use for 45 years and was nearing the end of its run, before being replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial reverse to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday. This gives the 1954 wheat penny an additional layer of historical importance, as it belongs to the final decade of the wheat cent series and serves as one of the last links to Brenner's original vision. The production of the 1954 wheat penny took place at 3 facilities: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint, each contributing to the total mintage of that year. Philadelphia produced the bulk of the coins with no mint mark, as was customary. Denver struck coins marked with a small d beneath the date, and San Francisco contributed its own mint mark issues, although in reduced numbers compared to earlier years. This tri-mint production gives collectors a variety of 1954 wheat pennies to study and pursue, each with its own scarcity profile and strike quality. The economic climate of 1954 adds another layer of context. The United States was experiencing a period of post-war growth. Suburbanization was spreading across the country, car ownership was becoming more common, television sets were transforming living rooms, and the economy was expanding. Yet inflation, concerns, and debates about monetary policy still touched ordinary citizens in their daily lives. A penny in 1954 carried more purchasing power than it does today. A single cent could buy a stick of gum or contribute meaningfully toward a child's allowance, making the wheat penny an active participant in the daily economy. The minting process itself was a blend of artistry and industrial power. The planchets were prepared from copper alloy, which by 1954 had stabilized at 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Following the temporary wartime change to steel cents in 1943, the presses struck millions upon millions of these coins, each one carrying the proud image of Lincoln into the hands of the American public. Quality control, however, was not perfect, and this has given us fascinating error coins and varieties from 1954. Off-center strikes, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and die cracks have all been documented, and these minting anomalies transform what was once a routine cent into a collectible treasure. Some of these varieties can command significant premiums in the numismatic market, especially those with strong doubling on the date or mint mark. Collectors have long prized the 1954's wheat penny in particular, since San Francisco mintages were relatively modest. By the mid-1950s, the San Francisco Mint was nearing the end of its role in striking cents, halting cent production entirely after 1955. This makes the 1954's not only a collectible coin in its own right, but also a historical artifact of a minting era that was about to close. Enthusiasts of the Lincoln cent often note that coins from San Francisco carry a unique charm, perhaps due to their lower mintages and the way they circulated less widely across the country compared to the Philadelphia and Denver issues. When we study the 1954 wheat penny, we also uncover personal stories. This was a coin that might have jingled in the pocket of a factory worker in Detroit or been dropped into the till of a soda fountain in New York. It may have been saved by a child starting a coin collection inspired by the booming interest in hobbyist coin collecting during the 1950s. Fueled by coin boards and numismatic magazines. Every 1954 penny could have been part of someone's daily life, each one a witness to the culture and commerce of its time beyond the minting numbers and design details. The 1954 wheat penny also reflects broader themes in American history. The Cold War was intensifying in the mid-1950s. The United States was asserting itself globally, while domestically it was grappling with issues of civil rights, prosperity, and cultural change. And through it all, the Lincoln cent quietly circulated as both money and symbol representing stability in a time of transition. Collectors today, who seek out the 1954 wheat penny, are not just chasing a piece of copper, they are reaching back into history, trying to hold in their hands the essence of mid-century America. Some pursue high-grade examples certified by professional grading services, where the details of Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks remain crisp. Others chase rare error varieties or simply enjoy building complete date and mint mark sets. Each 1954 penny, whether brilliant, uncirculated, or heavily worn, carries its own journey and story that makes it unique. When we dive deep into the 1954 wheat penny, we open doors into art history, economics, minting technology, cultural values, and even personal nostalgia. This coin has the power to teach us about the United States Mint, the decisions of engravers and treasury officials, and the way everyday money reflects national identity. For a numismatist or historian, a coin, the 1954 wheat penny, is not just an object. It is a portal to a world of meaning. And the more we look, the more we discover. And so, the story of the 1954 wheat penny is not only the story of a coin, but the story of a nation in motion, standing at the crossroads of tradition and change. And it is this depth, this richness, and this connection to both the past and present that ensures the wheat penny of 1954 will always command fascination among collectors, historians, and all who value the history written in metal and memory. Imagine holding in your hand a small copper coin that at first glance looks like every other wheat penny ever minted, but when you look closer, you realize it carries one of the most fascinating and legendary stories in all of American numismatics. The wheat penny of 1955 is not just a coin. It is a gateway into one of the greatest minting blunders in United States history. A mistake so famous and so captivating that it transformed an ordinary cent into an icon of rarity, desire, and endless debate. Collectors across the decades have pursued it relentlessly. Dealers have told its story thousands of times, and historians have dissected every angle of how it came to be. But what is the real history behind the 1955 wheat penny? Why does this small piece of copper command such an important place in the world of coins? And what happened in that unforgettable year that gave rise to one of the most recognized errors in American coinage? To truly understand the story of the 1955 wheat penny, we must step back into the middle of the 20th century. The United States in 1955 was a country at the crossroads of tradition and transformation. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The Cold War was intensifying. The post-war economic boom was reshaping daily life, and the American public was seeing vast changes in culture, technology, and prosperity. In the middle of all of this, the United States Mint continued its daily work of striking billions of coins for commerce. Coins that were often overlooked in daily life, but which would one day tell the story of a nation. The wheat penny itself had been introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, featured the iconic profile of Lincoln on the obverse and two stylized wheat stalks framing the denomination on the reverse. This design became one of the most beloved and enduring in United States history, running until 1958. By the time 1955 arrived, the Lincoln wheat cent was deeply familiar to Americans who used it constantly in daily transactions, from a candy bar to a bus ride to a newspaper. It was a coin of the P. Apply it within that ordinary year of 1955. Something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint as presses roared and dies clashed under pressure. A misalignment occurred during the hubbing process. The working dies responsible for striking cents were accidentally impressed twice, but not in perfect alignment. The result was a doubled die obverse where Lincoln's portrait looked correct, but the inscriptions on the obverse, "Liberty in God We Trust," and the date 1955 were boldly doubled. This was not a faint error. This was not a subtle doubling. This was dramatic, obvious, and unmistakable. Collectors would later call it one of the most striking double die errors ever produced in the history of American coinage. When the error coins were first released, they slipped unnoticed into circulation, mixed in with millions of normal cents. By the time the mistake was discovered, many had already entered the hands of the public. It is estimated that somewhere between 20,000 and 24,000 pieces were struck with this doubled die obverse, a tiny fraction compared to the hundreds of millions of cents minted in 1955, but enough to spark a wildfire in the collecting world. Once the error was recognized, the story spread quickly. Collectors scrambled to find the coin. Ordinary citizens checked their pocket change. Dealers advertised the new rarity, and demand skyrocketed. This was the birth of one of the most famous and accessible error coins ever known. Unlike many rarities which exist only in the hands of the wealthy elite, the 1955 double die wheat penny was affordable in its early years and could be found by sharp-eyed individuals in circulation. It became a symbol of the thrill of discovery, proving that treasure could still be hiding in your pocket. Decades past the fame of the 1955 wheat penny only grew. It became the star of countless coin shows, auction catalogs, and reference books. It was featured in newspapers, magazines, and television programs. The coin was even used by some dealers as a promotional giveaway in starter coin sets. During the 1950s and 1960 seconds, a move that only deepened its reputation as a legendary piece of American numismatics. History of this coin also shines light on the minting process itself. The era reveals how dies were prepared, hubbed, and used, and how even the smallest misalignment could create a lasting legacy. The double die obverse of 1955 has been studied by generations of numismatists who analyze the strength of the doubling, the position of the letters, and the precise circumstances that created the anomaly. Every line of text, every doubled inscription tells us about the minting technology of its time. Over the years, the value of the 1955 double die wheat penny has climbed significantly, while millions of ordinary wheat cents from 1955 remain common. This particular error commands thousands of dollars depending on condition. Coins in higher mint state grades can fetch staggering sums at auction, while even heavily circulated examples are highly sought after by collectors. The combination of fame, accessibility, and dramatic appearance makes it one of the most enduring icons of the numismatic world. But beyond value, the 1955 wheat penny teaches us about history, about the dedication of collectors, and about the human fascination with mistakes that turn into marvels. It is a coin that has appeared in countless collections, from beginners who dream of finding one to experts who cherish its legacy. It is both a piece of everyday commerce and a symbol of extraordinary fortune. Its story captures the very spirit of numismatics, the hunt, the history, and the human connection to objects of the past. As you listen to this journey unfolding, imagine the presses at the Philadelphia Mint hammering copper planchets in 1955. Imagine the workers who never realized that history was being made under their watch. Imagine the ordinary citizens who unknowingly spent these coins on candy or coffee, never dreaming that one day those cents would be worth hundreds or thousands. Imagine the excitement of the first collector who noticed the doubling and recognized the treasure hidden in plain sight. 1955 wheat penny stands as a legend, not because it was planned, but because it was a mistake that became history. A mistake that turned copper into gold in the imagination of collectors everywhere. Its story is not just about a coin, it is about the mystery of chance, the power of error, and the way a small copper cent can capture the hearts of generations. This is the tale of the 1955 wheat penny, and it is a story that still continues every time someone checks their change and dreams that maybe, just maybe, they will uncover one of the most famous treasures ever struck by the United States Mint. Imagine holding in your hand a small piece of American history, a coin so common yet so powerful in its story that it bridges the gap between generations and carries within it the mark of an era that shaped the modern United States. The 1957 wheat penny may look like just another copper cent, but when you begin to dig deeper into its past, its production, its symbolism, and its journey across countless hands, you discover that it is not simply a coin, but rather a key to understanding mid-20th century America. To captivate your imagination, let us step back into the year 1957, time when America was in the midst of transformation. Dwight D. Eisenhower was serving as president. The interstate highway system was expanding. Televisions were becoming fixtures in households across the nation, and the Cold War was shaping politics, industry, and daily life. Against this backdrop, the United States Mint continued to produce the iconic Lincoln wheat penny coin, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The wheat penny series was already beloved by the American public, but by 1957, the end of the design was just around the corner, making every cent from these final years part of a closing chapter in numismatic history. The 1957 wheat penny was struck at two mints: the Philadelphia Mint, which produced coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, which carried the small d mint mark on the reverse. Together, they minted hundreds of millions of coins. But while the numbers may sound massive, each cent played a role in the economy of a nation booming with post-war optimism. Copper was the core metal used in its composition, consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, a mixture that had been standard for the wheat penny for decades, though slight variations had occurred during World War II, when the mint temporarily experimented with steel cents because of wartime needs. By 1957, however, the coin had returned firmly to its classic copper form, giving it that distinctive reddish-brown glow when newly minted. The obverse of the coin featured the timeless portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, design so powerful and enduring that it still graces the penny today. Over a century later, Lincoln's bust faces right with the word Liberty stamped to the left, and the motto "In God We Trust" arched above his head. The date, 1957, sits just to the right, making it clear to collectors exactly when the coin was struck. Each detail of the portrait carried symbolic weight. Lincoln himself represented unity, leadership, and freedom, the very ideals that Americans held onto during the uncertain climate of the 1950 sun. The reverse, two simple yet elegant wheat stalks, framed the words 1 cent and United States of America, flanked by the motto Pluribus Unum, from many one. This reverse design gave the coin its famous name, wheat penny or wheat cent, and it was this reverse that was on its way out by 1959, when the coin would be redesigned with the Lincoln Memorial. The 1957 issue therefore stands as one of the last times the wheat design would circulate widely, which adds a historical significance that cannot be overlooked when studying the 1957 wheat penny from a collector's perspective. Its value lies not just in rarity but in condition. Millions of these coins still exist, but finding one in pristine, uncirculated form with sharp details and bright luster can command a premium, especially with certified grading from professional services. A circulated penny might only fetch a few cents above face value, but an uncirculated example, especially in high mint state grades, could reach several dollars to hundreds, depending on the strike quality. Collectors particularly seek out examples with strong details on Lincoln's hair and beard, and with full original red color preserved. In addition to regular issues, the 1957 wheat penny has varieties and errors that fascinate collectors: doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, and clipped planchets are just a few of the mistakes that sometimes left the mint and ended up in the hands of collectors. These error coins can be worth significantly more than their regular counterparts, in some cases hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and clarity of the error. The Denver Mint especially was known for producing large quantities of coins with repunched mint marks during the 1950s, making the 1957 D variety one to examine carefully under magnification. The cultural context of the 1957 wheat penny also adds to its charm. The cent circulated during a time when America was enjoying rock and roll, with Elvis Presley leading the charts. Automobiles like the Chevrolet Bel Air and Ford Fairlane symbolized the golden age of cars, and schoolchildren might have carried a 1957 penny to spend on candy, bubble gum, or a soda at the corner store. The coin was part of daily life for millions of Americans, weaving itself into memories and transactions both big and small. It is not just a piece of copper, but a silent witness to a decade of changes. We dive deeper. We also find that the 1957 penny stands at a symbolic crossroads of American coinage history. Within 2 short years, the wheat reverse would be retired, marking the end of an era that had lasted for 50 years, and ushering in the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. Collectors often see 1957 pennies as transitional pieces, coins that mark the final breath of a beloved design before it gave way to a new chapter. From the metallurgical composition to the artistry of Brenner's design, from the mint's production challenges to the countless hands that carried these coins across gas stations, diners, schools, and factories, the 1957 wheat penny is much more than a cent. It is a story pressed into copper, a fragment of a nation's journey during the middle of the 20th century. When we look at these coins today, we are not just examining a relic of monetary history, we are connecting with the spirit of an America filled with ambition, optimism, and pride. This journey through the 1957 wheat penny is not just about numismatics, it is about history, culture, design, economics, and memory. And over the next 2 hours, we will explore its origins, its production, its varieties, its place in American society, and its enduring legacy among collectors today. So sit back as we uncover the full story of the 1957 wheat penny, a coin that carries the heartbeat of a nation in its copper shell. Imagine holding in your hand a coin that marks both an ending and a beginning, a coin that carries the weight of decades of American history while at the same time closing the chapter on one of the most iconic designs ever struck by the United States Mint. The 1958 wheat penny represents the final year of production for the beloved Lincoln wheat cent, a design that had been in circulation since 1909 and had become a cornerstone of American coinage. When people see the 1958 wheat penny, they often underestimate its importance because they see it as just another 1-cent piece. Yet the reality is, this coin symbolizes the end of an era, the closing of nearly half a century of artistry, patriotism, and cultural heritage. Minted during a time when the United States was emerging from the shadow of World War II and standing tall in the midst of the Cold War, the 1958 penny was the last to carry the classic wheat ears on its reverse, a design by Victor David Brenner that had remained essentially unchanged since the days of President Theodore Roosevelt, who had first championed the beautification of American coinage. This coin is more than copper, it is a snapshot of the 1950s, a decade marked by prosperity, booming suburbs, the rise of television, and a society on the brink of major social change. When we dive into the history of the 1958 wheat penny, we find stories that go beyond numismatics. We are talking about the artistry of Brenner, who immortalized Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with such dignity and realism that his design has survived to this very day. We are looking at the minting process of the late 1950s, when the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint produced these final wheat cents in massive quantities. Over 250 million struck in Philadelphia alone, and more than 800 million in Denver. Yet despite those staggering numbers, the significance of this issue has ensured its enduring popularity among collectors to this day. It is a coin that may be common in terms of mintage but priceless in terms of historical value. The 1958 wheat penny is also surrounded by fascinating stories about the transition to the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959, decision made to honor the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This transition would mark the first major change in the design of the Lincoln cent in 50 years, making 1958 the last true wheat penny. Collectors often look at it as a bookend, a final page in a long and treasured series that began with the 1909 VD cents and carried through decades of American life, through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the rise of modern America. Beyond its broad history, there are details about the metal composition of the 1958 wheat penny, which was struck primarily in a bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, making it heavier, richer, and more durable than the later copper-plated zinc cents we use today. There are stories of the countless everyday Americans who used these coins to buy candy, pay for streetcar rides, or drop into piggy banks, never imagining that one day people would study and collect them with such passion. In the world of errors and varieties, the 1958 wheat penny carries with it one of the most legendary rarities ever known, the 1958 double-die obverse penny, a coin so scarce that only a handful are known to exist, and each one is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This error, which shows strong doubling on the inscriptions, like "Liberty and in God We Trust," has fascinated collectors for decades and has elevated the 1958 wheat penny from being just a common cent to being the centerpiece of one of the greatest numismatic mysteries. To truly appreciate the 1958 wheat penny, we must also understand the cultural and historical backdrop of its time. In 1958, America was experiencing rapid change. The space race had begun with the launch of Sputnik just the year before, and the United States was racing to catch up. Television was shaping the way families consumed entertainment. Elvis Presley was at the height of his fame, and civil rights movements were gaining momentum. Against this backdrop, the penny remained a humble companion in the pockets of millions of Americans, its value symbolic of thrift, work ethic, and the spirit of saving something small that collectively built into something significant. As we go deeper into this history, we can trace the legacy of the wheat penny from its birth in 1909, when it honored Abraham Lincoln as the first historical figure to ever appear on a United States coin, through the decades of change and challenge that America endured all the way to its farewell issue in 1958. This farewell was not only the end of a design, but the end of a tradition that had connected generations of Americans across nearly half a century of shared history. So, the 1958 wheat penny is not just a coin. It is the closing line of one of the greatest chapters in United States numismatic history. It is a symbol of the nation in transition. It is a reminder of the artistry of Victor David Brenner. It is a link to the stories of ordinary Americans and extraordinary collectors. It is a coin that deserves to be studied, celebrated, and preserved for the generations yet to come. In the world of American numismatics, every coin tells a story, and the 1984 Washington quarter is no exception. It carries with it a rich blend of history, design, legacy, economic context, minting details, collector intrigue, and hidden value that goes far beyond its simple 25-cent face value. To truly appreciate the 1984 quarter, we must begin with the roots of the Washington quarter itself, a coin born out of the bicentennial celebration of George Washington's birth in 1932, when the Treasury sought a new design to replace the standing Liberty quarter. The choice of Washington was deliberate, not just to honor the first president, but to cement his image as the symbol of American leadership, unity, and democracy. The artist John Flanagan was commissioned to create the design, which featured Washington's left-facing profile on the obverse and a heraldic eagle with spread wings on the reverse. This design would last uninterrupted until 1998, giving the Washington quarter a visual identity that every American knew by heart. And by 1984, this design had been in use for more than 5 decades, making the coin at once familiar yet quietly evolving with each passing year. 1984 Washington quarter was minted at three primary locations: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Philadelphia quarters carried no mint mark. Denver quarters were the D mark, and San Francisco quarters carried the S mark, with San Francisco producing the proof. Coins meant for collectors rather than circulation. In terms of mintage numbers, Philadelphia struck over 676 million, Denver produced more than 546 million, while San Francisco struck just over 3 million proof coins. These high mintage numbers may suggest the coin is common, and indeed in circulation. Most 1984 quarters still hold only their face value, but as collectors know, rarity is not always about total numbers, but about survival conditions, strike quality errors, and varieties. 1984 Washington quarter was struck in a composition of copper nickel clad on a pure copper core, a change introduced in 1965 when silver was eliminated from regular quarters due to rising silver prices. The clad composition gave the quarter its distinctive silvery sheen while keeping production costs low, yet this shift away from silver still impacts how collectors view post-1964 quarters, since most have no intrinsic metal value. The 1984 quarter must be understood through other numismatic qualities, such as grading errors and historical placement of the fascinating aspects of the 1984 Washington quarter. The state of the United States Mint during the early 1980s. It was a time of high-volume coinage. The American economy was stabilizing after the inflationary 1970 seconds, and the demand for coinage remained strong. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were running full capacity, meaning dies were often overused, leading to weak strikes, die cracks, and misaligned dies. This is where the true collector value of the 1984 quarter emerges in the form of errors and varieties. Some 1984 quarters show double dies on the obverse, particularly around the motto "In God We Trust" or on the word "Liberty." Other examples reveal die breaks on the eagle's wings or tail feathers on the reverse, while off-center strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets also exist. These anomalies are where ordinary circulation coins cross the threshold into collectible treasure. As collectors often debate the value of the 1984 quarter in high grades, a standard circulated coin remains only worth face value. However, when found in mint state grades, particularly Ms. 65 and above, values rise significantly. According to Grading Service population reports, the 1984 D quarter in Ms. 67 condition is scarcer than its Philadelphia counterpart and can fetch hundreds of dollars at auction. Proofs from San Francisco, when preserved with deep cameo contrast and perfect surfaces, also command premium prices. A PR70 deep cameo example can be worth several $100s depending on demand. These distinctions between circulation strikes, mint marks, and proof issues form the backbone of numismatic value for this year. From a historical standpoint, the 1984 quarter sits in an interesting position within the long Washington quarter series. It is part of the later clad era, but still predates the radical design change that would come with the state quarters program in 1999, meaning it belongs to a period when Washington's profile and the heraldic eagle still represented American stability, consistency, and trustworthiness to millions of people handling these coins daily. Yet, because it falls into a high mintage non-silver era, it is often overlooked by casual collectors. That is precisely why dedicated numismatists study it so deeply, because within the ocean of billions of coins, even the smallest differences create significant historical and monetary value. The art of coin grading also plays a critical role in appreciating the 1984 Washington quarter. Professional graders look for strike sharpness, luster, contact marks, and eye appeal. The difference between an Ms. 64 and Ms. 67 coin may seem minimal to the untrained eye, but in the market, it can mean the difference between a few dollars and several $100s. Because so many 1984 quarters were heavily used in commerce, finding one with pristine luster and minimal bag marks is a true challenge. This scarcity of condition rarity creates demand and demand creates value. One cannot ignore the cultural and economic backdrop of 1984 itself. This was the Reagan-era. America was experiencing renewed confidence. The Cold War was still ongoing. The Olympic Games were held in Los Angeles that summer, and technology was beginning to reshape life in unprecedented ways. Coins like the 1984 quarter were circulating in a nation of payphones, vending machines, and daily cash transactions, making them an intimate part of everyday life. Each 1984 quarter passed through countless hands, buying groceries, bus fares, or newspapers, unknowingly embedding itself into the story of ordinary Americans. In this way, the coin is not only a numismatic artifact, but a cultural snapshot of a nation in motion. For collectors today, building a complete set of Washington quarters from 1932 to 1998, the 1984 issue represents a vital link. It is not rare in the absolute sense, but it fills an important chronological role, and collectors who pursue registry sets know that high-grade examples are not easy to secure. The challenge of finding pristine survivors gives the coin a prestige that casual observers may overlook. Ultimately, the story of the 1984 Washington quarter is one of contrasts: massive mintage numbers versus scarce high-grade survivors, common clad composition versus rare error varieties, everyday pocket change versus valuable numismatic treasures. It embodies the legacy of Washington as a national icon, the enduring work of John Flanagan as a designer, and the never-ending pursuit of collectors to uncover hidden gems in ordinary coins. When we hold a 1984 Washington quarter, we are holding not just a piece of money, but a piece of history, a symbol of American stability during a transformative decade, and a reminder that even the most common coin can reveal extraordinary stories for those willing to look closely. The year 1995 marked an important moment in American coinage and numismatic history because it was not just another year in the long production run of the Lincoln cent, but one that stood out for collectors, historians, and casual observers alike. The Lincoln penny has been one of the most iconic pieces of American coinage since its introduction in 1909, when it replaced the Indian head cent and featured the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner as a way to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Over the decades, this penny has gone through changes in composition, minting technology, and design details, while still retaining its role as the most widely circulated coin in the United States. By 1995, the Lincoln penny had already passed through multiple eras of change, from the early bronze issues to the steel cents of 1943 during World War II, to the shift in composition in 1982, when the traditional copper alloy was abandoned for a cheaper copper-plated zinc format. The 1995 penny comes to us as part of the copper-plated zinc era, meaning that each coin was composed of a zinc core with a thin layer of copper making up its outer surface. The United States Mint began using this composition in 1982 as a cost-saving measure, because the rising price of copper made it too expensive to continue striking 1-cent coins with the old 95% copper alloy. For collectors, this change made the penny less substantial physically and also raised concerns about long-term durability, but from a purely economic standpoint, it was a necessary move. By 1995, the new composition was well established, and millions upon millions of these pennies were being struck at multiple mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and for special collector issues, the West Point Mintoni. Of the reasons the 1995 penny has become so fascinating is because of the special double die obverse variety discovered that year. In coinage history, a double die occurs when, during the die creation process, the design elements are impressed twice at slightly different angles or positions, leading to a coin with doubled lettering or imagery. On the 1995 Lincoln cent, the double die obverse became one of the most dramatic and easily visible double dies of modern coinage. Collectors quickly noticed that the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," as well as the date 1995 itself, showed clear doubling visible without magnification. For years before, the hobby had seen doubled dies such as the famous 1955 Lincoln cent, which became legendary. But in 1995, the mint accidentally created a modern version that electrified a new generation of collectors. Discovery of this variety sparked excitement across the coin collecting community because it was rare enough to be valuable yet common enough that dedicated searchers could still find examples in circulation. Newspapers and coin magazines of the time reported on it, drawing the attention of the public and adding a spark of popularity to the Lincoln Cent series. This event brought renewed attention to the penny and gave collectors a sense that the age of great varieties had not ended in the 1950s or 1960 seconds, but was alive in the 1990s. Outside of the doubled die obverse variety, the 1995 penny also has significance in terms of mint history. Philadelphia struck over 6 billion pennies that year. Denver added billions more, and San Francisco produced proof cents for collectors. The sheer scale of production demonstrates the continued reliance on the penny in everyday American commerce. Even though by 1995 inflation had eroded its practical purchasing power dramatically, the penny was still an essential part of transactions used in vending machines, change drawers, and coin rolls in banks. The production numbers reflected the mint's effort to keep up with circulation demands, but also highlighted the ongoing debate about whether the penny should remain in production at all. The design of the 1995 penny remained consistent with Victor David Brenner's original portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been introduced in 1959 to commemorate the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth and the 150th anniversary of his birth. The Lincoln Memorial reverse carried a special symbolism, as it not only depicted an iconic national monument, but also cleverly included a small image of the Lincoln statue within the memorial, making it the only United States coin to feature the same individual on both the obverse and reverse. The design, by Frank Gasparo, had become familiar to generations of Americans, and by 1995, it was deeply ingrained in the national consciousness. From a numismatic standpoint, collectors today often look back at the 1995 penny as a transitional coin bridging the era of the classic Lincoln Memorial cent with the later changes that would come in 2009 when the Lincoln Bicentennial cents were issued, and then in 2010 when the Union Shield design replaced the memorial. But within its own time, the 1995 penny became a centerpiece of collecting because of that double die obverse, and because it gave hobbyists a reason to check their pocket change. Again, in an era when many assumed that all modern coins were too mass-produced to yield treasures in terms of value, the vast majority of 1995 pennies, whether struck at Philadelphia or Denver, carry only face value in circulated condition because so many billions were made. However, the 1995 double die obverse cent can command significant premiums, especially in high mint state grades. Examples certified by professional grading services such as PCGs or NGC often sell for hundreds of dollars, and in the very finest conditions can exceed $1,000. This makes the 1995 double die obverse one of the most valuable modern Lincoln cents, and a staple of every variety collector's wish list. Even beyond that, the proof issues from San Francisco remain desirable for typesets and proof collections, and in pristine condition with perfect grades, can also attract strong interest. What makes the 1995 Lincoln penny especially intriguing from a historical perspective is how it captures multiple layers of American history in one small coin. Represents the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, whose face has graced the cent for more than a century, and who remains one of the most admired figures in United States history. Represents the technological challenges of minting coins by the billions, and the occasional mistakes that result in collectible varieties. It represents the economic realities of a nation where inflation had rendered the cent nearly obsolete in buying power. Yet tradition and habit kept it alive. It represents the passion of collectors who even in the 1990s were still scouring their change jars and bankrolls in search of something extraordinary. The story of the 1995 penny is therefore not just about metal and minting presses, but about people, about the ordinary Americans who use these coins every day, about the collectors who cherish them, about the mint employees who struggled to maintain quality control amid massive production quotas, and about the historians who look back and see in a simple coin the reflection of a larger cultural and economic narrative. The 1995 penny is a reminder that even the smallest denomination can carry weighty stories. When one considers the penny in the broader sweep of American coinage history, the 1995 example shows us how tradition, innovation, accident, and public fascination can intersect in unexpected ways. The Lincoln cent may only be worth 1 cent on paper, but in 1995 it was worth much more. In terms of history symbolism and collector excitement, its story is one of continuity and change, of honoring the past, while also creating new chapters for the future, and of reminding us that in our pockets, we carry not just coins, but fragments of history.